Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. Welcome back for another episode today. Today is a current trends topic where we talk about things going on currently that are relevant and pertinent to my estate and elder law world. And or maybe they're things I've seen on the news or stumbled across on social media. On today's current trends episode, we are going to talk about a timely topic. It's back to school season. Well, it's a little late to back to school season. Well, this episode's a little late to back to school season, but nonetheless, here we are. Somehow it's fall and back to school season. So today we are going to talk about something you may not have considered or ever thought of. It's going to be on why it is so important for college-aged kids, college students, to have some very basic estate documents in place. Estate planning is often not thought about when it comes to young adults, like college students. And not to mention, when college students do estate planning, it's not usually because they thought to do it. It's usually either the parents thought about it, hint, hint, or the parents realized, like, oh, my child is above the age of 18 and I can't make their decisions anymore for them. So let's say something happens. They fall off their lofted bed or they trip down the stairs, whatever, and they end up in the hospital. It is very possible that you, as their parent, or as their family member, as their guardian, whoever you are, may hit some roadblocks because, well, that child is above the age of 18 now. They are considered an adult, and that is why super basic estate documents may be desired for college students. So let's talk about a few specific situations where having some estate documents would really be handy for college students to have in place. And as we go through them, we'll discuss the documents that would support you and them in that situation. Up first, we've got studying abroad. If a college student elects to study abroad, do it. It was one of the best things I ever did. Having some basic documents in place before studying abroad would be helpful just in case something happens while they are in a foreign country. It is important to have something called a healthcare proxy or medical power of attorney in place because this allows someone, often a parent, but not always, to make medical decisions if the student is incapacitated or maybe just something has happened. Now, along these same lines, in an effort to not split hairs too much, it may be wise to consider also putting provisions in this document to basically say, hey, if I am unreachable, because remember, there are often significant time changes, guys. When it's like 8 a.m. over in Europe, it's 2 a.m. here, something like that. So if I'm unreachable, then so-and-so has the authority to make the student's healthcare decisions. And I know it seems possibly a little weird to think about that, like, with this idea of, well, I don't want anyone else making decisions for little Johnny besides me, the parent or the guardian. But I am certain you would not want no decisions to be made. So putting someone in charge if you are unable to be reached is a worthwhile consideration. A second thing to consider is a financial and legal power of attorney, which allows someone to handle financial and legal matters if needed. So here's an example. Let's pretend the kid is abroad and gets their wallet stolen. That happens. A lot of times, Americans stick out like a sore thumb and they are often preyed upon. So that happens, my friends. Would it not be nice to have a financial and legal power of attorney in place to allow you to step in and help? That would give you the authority to work with their banks, credit card companies, etc. And without a power of attorney, they very, 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 very likely will not speak to you. So then it's the kid, the college student, trying to do it by themselves abroad, and just the thought of that completely overwhelms me. These documents, like the healthcare proxy, medical power of attorney, and financial and legal power of attorney, can be especially helpful and so vital if any emergencies arise while the student is in a foreign country. Ultimately, this ensures that trusted individuals can act on the student's behalf if necessary. Now, another situation where having some estate documents would really perhaps be handy for college students to have in place is if the college student maybe, just merely travels without you. So, say they're going on spring break with their friends, for example, and they're heading down to Florida. So, this example is a little bit different than studying abroad because in this example, they're still in this country. Now, I would make the slight argument that while the documents are still beneficial for in countries like trips like spring break, they are generally perhaps less critical than, comparing to like extended study abroad programs in a whole different country. There are a few reasons I say and think that. So, first, due to mere logistics, usually a trip like spring break is shorter, like duration wise, and that means less time for something to go wrong. It's also typically easier to communicate with family members since it's often close to the same time zone or even the exact same time zone. Furthermore, while documents like a healthcare proxy, a medical power of attorney would still be incredibly useful, perhaps it is not as important to list someone as like a just in case I'm unreachable. And I say that because usually, like I said, it's the same or close to the same time zone. And it would be a lot easier for the family members to get to them if needed. Like it's significantly easier, of course, but it's also cheaper to fly to, say, Florida than if the student is studying abroad in like London or something. Along these same lines, a financial and legal power of attorney may not be super high priority just because because it's a shorter trip and easier for a family member to be able to step in if an emergency arises. So rather than scrambling to get these documents in place just for this trip, perhaps the focus should be more on like updating emergency contacts, making sure the student has their, updated health insurance information, and ensuring someone like you knows the ins and the outs of the itinerary. Rather, devote your time on things that, if an emergency arises, you are prepared and ready to easily and quickly step in. So, as you can probably feel and tell, kind of by how I'm describing this situation, really the primary difference between estate documents for studying abroad versus going on a trip like spring break is really the reduced risk due to the shorter duration, as well as the easier access to providing them support, providing the college students support, because they're within the same country. However, if it would give you immense peace of mind to have documents in place, do it to it, my friends, because simply having them will prove useful, especially if an unexpected situation happens. Now, I say all of that about, reduced risk, but don't let that be an excuse to not do estate documents for college students. And I say that because even when you take out the situations of studying abroad and going on spring break, merely being a college student and away from home and family comes with risks. And what I mean by that is often it is usually the first time the student is living away from family and sort of doing their own thing for the first time without mom, dad, family, guardian, whoever, not knowing their every move. So, hello, no curfews. I bring this up from merely kind of like a maturity standpoint. Most of us at that age thought we had the world figured out. And looking back now, we know we didn't. And I mean, I could come up with a million real life things that could happen. And I mentioned a few at the beginning of this episode, falling off the lofted bed or falling down the stairs. Maybe it's because my brain is constantly thinking of worst case scenario. But, like walking to class and getting hit by a car. Maybe they have too much to drink on their 21st birthday. What if they get drugged at a bar or they get into a car accident? And I know these are really yucky and gross things to think about, but this is real life, people. These things could happen. And this is why I'm bringing this up, because so often we do not think about college students in estate documents. Rather, so often it's assumed because you are their parent or family member or guardian that you have this authority to step in and help make decisions. And you actually very, very, very likely do not if they are above the age of 18. So consider this episode to be purely kind of like for an awareness thing, not a scare tactic. And I'm just trying to shine light on the fact that tragic things can happen to any of us, including those in college. And I think there's also something to be said for not only having these documents in place in case something does happen, but it's also a really great lesson for college students in seeing that this kind of thing is a responsible step toward adulthood. At this point, they're in college and they are sure closer to adulthood than, what do they call it now? Adulting, than ever. So just like how so many college students, get set up with a debit card or credit card that maybe you secretly or not so secretly monitor and maybe even help fund it, I've heard people say that's a way to start teaching them kind of basic finances. Like, hey, kid, you put in X and you only have X to spend, not Y. So, doing estate documents, I would argue, is just another example of starting to show them kind of these big girl and big boy, like adulting things. Now, as we start to close out this episode, it's really important for me to say that these type of documents, very, very basic documents, are really, really affordable, guys. I think people often associate estate documents as kind of like this super expensive thing. But when you're talking about doing extremely basic documents like healthcare proxy, medical power of attorney, financial and legal power of attorney, I guarantee they are probably cheaper than what you may spend at the grocery store in like a week or a month. A couple or a few $100 should get you these documents, even through an attorney, guys. There are a lot of online platforms and forums out there that can be obtained on the internet, and those may work. But if you find a good, estate attorney, I should say, to do them, going through an attorney gives you the peace of mind knowing it's done legally, appropriately, and within your state-specific laws. And anyone want to perhaps take a lead on a collaboration between estate attorneys like me and colleges and universities offering to do these documents on campus? I would totally do that and plant my little butt at a table, maybe like during orientation day or week or something, and just crank them out. How cool would that be? And maybe some schools do this. I don't know. If your kids' school or university does this, then definitely take advantage. Surely I'm not the only one that has ever thought about that. Anyway, I digress. You get the point. Estate planning for college students is important. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be very basic, and it doesn't have to be costly either. Okay, let's wrap this episode up, shall we? Next week, we're back to the celebrity estate planning type of episode. And during those types of episodes, we dive into a celebrity or big name person that has passed away and go into how their estate looked from an estate planning perspective. So, next week's episode is about the baseball great Yogi Berra. So, tune in for that next week, Legal Tea listeners. Talk to you then and stay well.